Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Darkfall tutorial. So today we're going to be doing another digital map painting, as you can see in the example here. So for this one, we're going to be doing this in the 3D view rather than the node editor, which we normally do it in. Again, this could be done in the node editor, and if you are interested in how it's done, make sure you leave a comment below just to let me know, and I'll go ahead and make a video on that. But for this example, we're going to do it in the 3D view. But the first thing we need to do is go ahead and select an image that we want to split up into layers, and then go ahead and add some assets. So go ahead and open up your photo editing software. I'm going to use GIMP. So let's go ahead and load in an image. I'm going to go ahead and go to my folders and use this image here. We've got a building here already, and we have some of these mountains and some in the background. As you can see, it's one single image. When we bring it into Blender, we're going to be bringing it in and creating separate layers within the 3D view. So this will all make sense later on, but just to kind of show you what I mean, if we just change this to white. So if we see these trees here, this will be brought in a separate layer. This mountain along with this one and this one. So once we've added the assets, we'll save this out as a single image and bring that into Blender. And then this one's going to be saved out on its own. Same thing for this and this background here as well. We'll add all these assets as well later on, but we first need to separate these out into their own layers. So remember, this is going to be its own layer. This is going to be on a layer 2. This one I think is a little bit behind these rocks, whereas this one's a bit further away. So this one I'd bring in 3rd. This one I'm going to bring in 4th, and this one I'm going to bring in last. Actually, I'm going to bring it in 5th, and I'm going to bring in a sky, which will be 6th. So don't worry about all this. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm just going to switch to the lasso tool. So then I'm going to draw around this front layer here, these trees. So if you zoom in, you'll be able to get a better selection around these trees. And if you're using the mouse, you can just left click and add loads of points and try and do something like that. But if you've got a graphics tablet, which is what I'm using right now, it's so much easier just to draw yourself a nice selection like this. You can do it fairly quickly. Now don't worry about it being too flat. We're going to add some detail. I'm going to delete some of this texture later on just to make it look a bit better. So don't worry how it looks now. I'm going to select all of these like this. So again, if you're using a mouse, you might want to take a little bit longer. You want to get a nice selection so it's not too bad. But again, we're going to come back with a brush and delete some of this just to get some more of that leafy texture. Bring that back. So there we go. I'm going to section this off like this. I'm going to press enter just to confirm that selection. So now I have this selected. What I need to do is, we have this layer here, which is our original image. I'm going to duplicate this by selecting this icon here. So it's just copied the layer. So then on this top one here, if I just press delete, we've deleted this section here. I mean, we can't see it because we've got the copy underneath, but if I just mute this, let's also mute this bottom layer here. So we just deleted this, and now it's got alpha transparency. If we switch to this one, we see it's just that original image, but now we just want to delete the other half of it. So if we hold Control and then press I, it just inverts the selection. So now when I press delete, we have this. So it's just split into 2 halves. So that's what, as I mentioned before, we're going to split it into different layers. And the way I decide which goes on what layer is whatever's in front or whatever's closest to the camera, which is this. This will be our first layer. Then this, and this will be our second layer with any assets that we add. This will be our 3rd layer, 4th, 5th, and 6th. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I didn't confuse things at the beginning. Our first one. So we can rename this so we know what it is. Select this one, and then we can mute it just so it doesn't get in the way. So now we want to separate out these mountains here. So make a selection. So I'm going to zoom in just so I can see it better. So I'm just going to close this off, hit return, and then we're just going to add this and this one to the selection. So I'm going to hold shift and then start drawing another selection. So now we have this. Let's go ahead and copy this again. For this top one, let's go ahead and press delete. Then for this bottom one here, hold Control and press I. Now we press delete. Now we have this. So I'm just going to do these three and then come back, and then we can move on. So now we've kind of split these up into different layers, and again when we bring this into Blender it will make sense. But one thing that we do need to do before we start adding the assets is when we animate the camera in Blender, these mountains are going to move and there's going to create some parallax motion for the background mountains. So let me kind of demonstrate that. When the camera moves up, these mountains are going to move down like this, and when they do that, it kind of reveals some of these mountains behind it. And since we've just cut things out and there's nothing behind it, we need to sort of replicate that or kind of copy it. So I'm just going to put that back. This is the mountains here. We need to extend these down. Let's do that for these first. Clone stamp tool, which is here. I'm going to hold Control and pick a section here, say this spot here. Bring up the brush size. And then I can just start painting in some more here like this. And again, you want to blend this in, which we will do in a minute, but I'm just going to sample from over here now. Maybe down here a bit. And bring this in like this. Sample from here. Bring this in. So again, most of this won't be seen. It's just when the camera moves, I don't know how much it's going to move right now, so I'd rather have more of the mountain. Let's say if I only filled it in a little bit, I might need some more later on, so I'd have to come back and fix it. So I'd rather do it now. But that's not too bad. Let's do the same for this one over here. Now these trees need to be on the top layer, since now they're behind this new addition that we added. So let's go and bring these trees all the way to the top layer. So let's select these trees, and again, as I mentioned, when the camera goes up, these trees will sort of come down and reveal underneath, and now we can see that there's no breaks in the mountains, which is what we wanted, so that's good. Let's get rid of those trees now. And the next one is, let's find it, this one here. So I'm going to do the same thing for this. So again, when these mountains here, when these go one way or another, it reveals like a broken bit of mountain, so it doesn't look good. So again, let's pull that back. Let's mute this mountain here. Let's go and extend this. And it's the same thing for all of these. Now I'm going to do the same thing, just extend these sections, and then I'll come back. Let's first select the trees. Go to select, feather, 8. Let's see what happens when we delete this. It looks okay, but what we can do, if we go to our eraser tool here, if we go to our brush settings, right now I'm using this paintbrush, but for this deleting thing, you want to kind of use a textured brush. Let's try this sponge one here. I'm going to first increase the size, just so I know kind of how it looks. Now one of the things I need to do is, it's still too soft so I can't really tell, so let's go over to the properties here, then down to the hardness. Let's give this, maybe try 100. See how it adds this sort of pattern to the edges, and if we press it a couple of times, it'll sort of blend into the background better. So that's kind of the idea. Let's go ahead and find another brush. Let's see if this sponge one's better. It's okay. Another thing I want to do is go to the settings and change the angle of the brush. It's not too bad. So I think I'm going to use this. Let's go ahead and decrease the size. You want to zoom in as well. and start clicking away. Start eroding these edges and give it more of a tree vibe, I guess. But it's definitely better than a soft, like sharp, oh, it's not a sharp edge, but it's kind of a straight edge. Whereas this is going to give you more of a, it's going to give you more of a tree shape, hopefully. That's kind of the idea. So I'm just tapping away, and again, you'd be clicking away if you're using a mouse. You can sort of do this and edge in if you want. In some areas you want to just tap and erode it, I guess. And also rotating your brush and changing the angle as well will give you a different look every so often. So don't keep doing the same pattern over and over. Then I have this. I'm going to make sure we change our brush back. Let's reset these. This back to 30%, I think it was. Something like this. Yeah, that's okay. So now we have this. Let's go back to our layer panel. Decided to get rid of the back one, by the way. You guys wondering where that was. It kind of distracts from the shot. I mean, maybe add some mountain range in the background with the sky, but for now I'm just going to get rid of that. So now we have this. We're pretty much good to start putting in our assets. Just putting a background for the sky first. So we spent far too long in this section alone. So now we've split things up into the layers that will appear in Blender. Let's go ahead and add the assets to this, more of a to see matte painting. So there's a few images I'm going to use here. I'm going to use this one. Let's bring this over. Just drop this in. Now we can see it's added it to the back, so I need to bring this up. Drop it right in the front. Then I'm going to scale it down. Something like this. Scale it. Now I want to remove it from the background. It's pretty good since it's just a plain or a flat colored background. So let's go ahead and use the magic wand tool. Press delete. We get this. Same thing as we did before. I just want to go select. Feather. Now for this, maybe let's try 5. And then if we zoom in, we can see it. Press delete. So now we have this. We can go ahead and position it. So let's move this over. I want this one to sit right up here at the top. I want to add some more elements to it, but before I do that, let's go ahead and change the color of this image. So to colors. Now blending these two in, I guess there's professional ways to do it or proper ways to do it. The way I like to do it is first start with the hue saturation. And I know there's going to be somebody in the comments saying, well, that's not the way to do it, but I mean, this is the way I prefer to do it. And if you want to do it differently, that's entirely up to you. You can just set up your images and move straight onto the Blender part. But for those of you who kind of want to know my process on how I do it, this is basically it. So for the first one, I reduce the saturation, and then you can play around with the hue and the lightness. And what I would do is slowly increase these values until you get something that's almost perfect. Colors, curves. And then the brightness and contrast. So then the next thing we want to do is create some shadows. Like this has clearly got some shadows here, so this section would have shadows. Also pick out some of these details and make it look more 3D. Same thing for the highlights. We're going to add some highlights and just trying to finish this off. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm just going to add a new layer. And then I'm going to change this layer to multiply. Go to the color picker tool. Just select a color from here, this brownie color. Okay. Now you can use the paintbrush and get a solid thick line if you want. Or you can use the airbrush and gradually build those lines up, which is what I kind of like to do. But it's entirely up to you which you want to do it. So now I'm just going to add some of these shadows here. I'm going to zoom in as well. And you kind of want to pick out these details. See on the sides here. So I'm going to try and make this look a bit better. Okay, so now we have this. Let's go ahead and reduce the opacity, because this is where it looks like at the beginning. And then what we want to do is just kind of increase and add a shadow to these edges. So it kind of looks more 3D, but also gives you the right impression for the shading or for the lighting, I guess. So now let's go ahead and right click, merge this down, get rid of these edges. It's not too bad, and again, you can make this look better. The colors for this I'm not happy with, and I will come back and refine it. But I kind of just want to give you an idea how that's done. So yeah, I'm going to add some highlights, and it's kind of the same way. So let's right click on this layer, merge this down. Then with this castle, I'm just going to duplicate it. Then I'm going to go to colors, curves, and bring this way up. Something like this. And these are going to be for the highlights. We also kind of want to give it a better color than this. So okay, go to colors, hue saturation. I kind of want a pinkish color. Go to the hue. So let's right click on this layer, add layer mask, and we want this to be black full transparency. As soon as we do that, it goes away. Now what we can do is just paint in the areas that we want to be affected. So I'm going to go to my brush, and I want to make sure I select my other brush. I don't want this sponge texture. Let's go back to my, this one will do. I think this is the one I use. And then switch these colors. We want to use white. If we start painting in, it'll start affecting that area. And I'm going to use the airbrush, and then just pick out some of these edges now. Depending on the blend mode that we choose will give us a different result. Like, you know, that one there is just too crazy. But if we choose either overlay or soft light, that should give us a good result. Let's just mute this and bring it back. So again, it adds a bit more detail, and we just want to reduce the opacity as well. So that's kind of the idea. And then I'm going to right click, merge down. So now I've done that for this. I'm going to add again some more little details, then color them, and then add the shadows and highlights. I'm going to do the same thing for these rocks here, like same thing for the other elements. So I don't want to waste your time doing the same thing over and over again. So I'll be back in a second. So I tweaked this a little bit, added some more things here and changed the colors and whatnot. Then I went ahead and added a second castle over here, and then a third one over here. Then I wanted to add a little entrance over here, and some little detail over here as well, and then some more runes over here. So again, these were images that I just cut out and then duplicated it over here, scaled it down a bit, added some stairs and a little section here, and just kind of added some shadows to make it look as if it was sat in the mountain. So I'm just going to show you how I'm going to export this. So let's get rid of this background layer there. So this is the sky, and that will be exported on its own. So let's just mute this, mute all of these. So the first thing I want to export is the trees. So just unmute this, file, export as. Go ahead and find your project folder and make sure you save this too. So let's go ahead and create a new folder. And let's call this number 1. We also want to make sure that we save this as a PNG, since we want to save the alpha transparency. Go down to export. You can go ahead and change these if you want, but that'll work as standard. Go ahead and export this out. Hide this one. The next thing we want to export is the mountains. So it's this. And then anything that's sat on top of the mountains. So we want to add the castle, runes, and runes. So again, if there's anything else that you've added to these mountains, make sure you show them. Then let's go to File, Export As. It's going to be number 2. And then finally, we just want to export these background things. So let's go ahead and get rid of these. Then we want mountain to the left. So it's the same thing. I mean, you guys get the idea by now. So let's go back to Blender. So now in the 3D view, we need to make sure a couple of things first. We need to make sure that we're in cycles render. Make sure we set this to 100. And also for the frame rate, I'm going to choose 25 frames per second. Again, you can change this to 24, 23. You can change this to whatever you want. So now we've got this. You want to make sure you delete anything that's in the scene except for the camera. So I'm going to press A. just make sure we selected everything. If you've got a lamp or a cube, go ahead and delete that. We don't need them. Add in what's called image as plane. If you've ever used these, you probably know how this works. It's pretty simple. But if you've not, I'm going to show you how to do that. If we Shift A, go to Mesh, and then images as planes, just add this in. Now it's going to ask us for an image to use, so go ahead and find your image. We want to bring these in one at a time. If we bring them all in at once, it'll move them out of position, so make sure we bring these one at a time. Before we actually do anything, we want to go over here to the left and make sure we check a few settings. First thing is we want to use the alpha, since we have alpha transparency, so go ahead and check that. Then for the material settings, we don't want it to be diffuse, we want it to be shadeless. Otherwise, again, we'd need to add a lamp in the 3D view, but for this, we're just going to use shadeless. Then I go ahead and select the first one, which is the trees. Import image as planes. And then if we jump to the camera view by pressing numpad 0. So I'm going to select the camera here, and press G and just bring this down. If you've not already aligned the camera to the front view, if you press numpad 1, Control Alt numpad 0, I'm just going to bring this down just so it sits level. So press G and then Z, just to constrain it on the Z axis. Something like this, and don't worry about the size for now. Drag this in a little bit closer. Let's go ahead and add in the next one. So Shift A, image as plane. Shift A, image as planes. And then the last one, Shift A, image as planes. So now I have these, I'm going to select all of them like this. Jump to the camera view, and then I'm going to scale it up by pressing S. Maybe I should turn on screencast. Apologies that I didn't do this before. Since screencast keys doesn't work in the node editor, I don't really use it that often. It only works in the 3D view, so I forget to put it on sometimes. So apologies, let me just do this real quick. Okay, so yeah, let's scale this up. Now you can see what I'm doing down here. So now we can't actually see anything since it's in solid view. If you go down here, select this icon, and change the viewport shading to material. We should then see everything. Now one of the problems is if we scroll around, it's still a 2D flat thing, so we need to make it 3D, add some space. So you could try and select one of these, but it's kind of hard to right click and select it. So what I'm going to do is select number 4, drag this out. This is going to be one of the furthest ones away. Number 3, drag this back. Number 2, drag this back. So the further away we drag this will affect the camera, so you know, the more we move the camera, the more things will look like they're moving behind stuff, so keep that in mind. Like for example here, the parallax movement between these two objects is not going to be as much as these two objects because it's further away. Let's go ahead and add in a sky. Shift A, images planes. When we jump to front view, when we move things off into space, they don't line up, so I need to go ahead and line things up again. So number 1, so number 1 is okay, that's fine. Number 2, I'm going to select number 2 here, which is then mountains, and then I'm going to press S and just scale this up until it reaches where it should be, like this. Same thing for number 3, press S, and number 4. And again, that was because we moved stuff off into space. They no longer fit the proportions, so you need to rescale individually just to match the scale, I guess. So now the way this works, when we select the camera, when we move, if we press G and then press Y, when we move forwards, we see there's some parallax between the different layers, which is what we want. So let's go ahead and animate the camera now. With the camera selected, I'm just going to press I, and then add a location. If you were rotating the camera, you'd want to press location rotation. But just because we're going to move the location, we just need to press location. So now let's jump to the end frame, and I'm just going to press G, and then I'm going to press Y, and move this in just a little bit. You don't want to do it too much, and when you do go too far, it looks crazy and out of place, so keep that in mind as well. I also want to press G and then press Z. I just want to move it up a little bit as well. I'm going to press I, location. So now I've added a keyframe for both the Z and the Y. Does this. So we can see there's a bit of parallax between each of these layers. One of the things you might want to change, if you notice when you play through this animation, it speeds up and then slows down. And that's because of the way Blender is set up. So if you don't want that, if you just want it to move at one constant speed, let's just split this window. Again, and make sure you've got the camera selected. I'm going to change this window to the graph editor. But if we press A to make sure, so press A twice just to make sure we have all of this selected. If we press V and then choose automatic, so again you can play around with these and choose something different. Maybe so already it's looking pretty good as a fantasy map painting. I just want to add some more elements to it. For example, the waterfall here, and also maybe a waterfall in the background there. So another thing you want to do, if we just escape, go to the end frame and make sure you don't see any gaps or anything, see through anything. So let's go ahead and render this and make sure it looks good. If you do see some gaps, you might need to scale up some of these mountains or scale a few things up and move it around. But for the whole, it should look good. So just jump to the end frame where the camera's finished its movement. And there's no gaps, that looks good. So there's no gaps here. Let's check this over here. Nope, looks pretty good. Another thing we want to do is add some motion blur. Now if I just go to the midpoint here, then if I go down where it says motion blur, I just want to activate this motion blur. So now the shutter speed is 0.5. If we give this a render, let's first render it without any motion blur just so we can compare them. So I'm going to press F12, or you can go back to the top, hit render, but I'm just going to press F12. So now we've rendered this. I'm going to go down here where it says slot 1. You can change this to slot 2. You can press the numbers on your keyboard, 1, 2, 3, all the way down, and just change the slots. This helps when you want to compare two results. You can flip between them pretty quickly. But what you need to do is make sure you change it to the empty slot before you render. So now I'm just going to activate motion blur. Then I'm going to press F12 again, re-render this, and you'll notice the time will be a little bit longer than the last time. I mean, it shouldn't be too much difference at this small amount, but the more we increase it to, the more it'll slow down your render speeds, so keep that in mind. So now you might not be able to see any difference if we go between 1 and 2. You probably can't see any difference until we actually go closer. That's really hard to see, and that's because it's only moving a little bit. Go back to the 3D view. If we check it out, it's going dead slow. It's only moving a small amount. If this was moving dead fast like this, then the motion blur would be quite noticeable. So for us to see the motion blur on this, we're going to have to increase this quite a bit. So I'm going to choose a value of 2. If I go back to my UV image editor, this was the 0.5. Now if I switch it to number 3, give this a re-render at a value of 2, see how that looks. But again, play around with this until you find something that works for your scene. Another thing I want to add is the waterfall. The waterfall is a video, so what we would have to do is bring that in either to the node editor or bring it in as an image sequence, which is what I did. So I rendered this waterfall out as an image sequence. If you wanted to do the same thing, you would have to render out your waterfall as an image sequence. So if you don't know how to do that, maybe leave a comment below. I'll make a video how to do that. So let's go ahead and load this in. And we want to do the same thing as we did before. So we want to add an image as plane. I'm just going to Shift A, image as planes. Now for this one, what we need to do something a little bit different for this. Now normally when we bring in an image sequence, we'd just press A to select all of them. But if we did that, it would bring every one of these, this image sequence, which is like 250 frames. So 250, so it would add 250 of these to the 3D view, which I don't want. I want to select one of them. So import image as plane. Now we have it over here, and I'm just going to jump to the front view. I'm going to scale it up a little bit. And then I'm going to press R to rotate, and then I'm going to press Z to constrain it on the Z axis, and then I'm going to type 180, and then hit enter, then we go. So it's just rotated it, flipped it around. Now another thing we need to do is it's clipping this plane here, so I just need to bring it forward just a little bit, not too much. So now we can see the waterfall isn't long enough. We need to bring this down. Now this is one of the benefits of doing this in the 3D view. We get to kind of deform this in a way that we can't in the node editor. And it's one of the things that's missing in the node editor is that kind of cage deform or that mesh deform sort of tool. And that's what we're going to do now. So tab into edit mode with this plane selected. Now I'm going to press Ctrl R to add a loop cut, which is here. Scroll the middle mouse wheel, just so we have something like this, and then left click. Now what I'm going to do is go to edge select this edge here, and then I'm going to use the proportional editing tool, which is this one here, and then enable, or you can press O just to enable and disable it. So when we drag this edge down like this, we can bring the rest of the waterfall down as well. If we increase the middle mouse wheel like this, we can bring more of it down. So as I mentioned, we can kind of do that cage deform. So if we add a few more loop cuts, so if we select all of it and then press W, subdivide it a few times, go to vertices select, and then if we select one of these vertices here, and then press G, see how we can move it around, and we can sort of move it around and deform it around rocks, or sort of position it and make it flow the way we want. I'm going to kind of do that with this up here. Like, there's nothing too extreme, but you can go crazy with this and deform this. But I say go crazy, don't go too crazy, because you can sort of tell it doesn't look right when you go too much. So yeah, now I've added this, we need to make it work. Like if we play through, it's a still image, it's not going to do anything. If we split this window and then change this to the node editor, we're in this section here, which is the materials section. Normally we switch straight over to the scene tab, but today we're going to use this. Then what I want to do, we can see the materials have already been set up for us to use as an image as plane with transparency. So all we need to do is just change this one node. So Shift A, go to texture, image sequence, and it's going to ask us for this. We already loaded in this image, so we should be in this folder. So now if we press A, select all of these, import image sequence, and then we have to find it, it's hiding. Now we have this. Let's go ahead and connect this up. So we've got the alpha going into the factor. Let's replace that. And then we've got the image or the color going into the color of this node here. So let's replace that one as well. Now we have this. Don't worry about that. That's normal. Sometimes it loads, like it'll take a while, but then it'll load and show you that image again. Sometimes it won't. This is just for the 3D view. If you ever want to check it, go over here to your materials, then go down to where it says preview. If it looks like this, you're good. If it's got black around it, you need to check your alpha. If it looks pink, you may need to reload the file. Another thing you might need to do is check your frames here. We know there's 250 frames for this video, this image sequence. We also want it to start on frame 1. We can also click auto refresh, which I think helps. Either helps with this or it helps in one way or another. So make sure you activate that. So we can't see it now, but if we give this a render and press F12, we'll be able to see the waterfall. There we go. It's not looking too bad. Goes off behind these trees here. So I'm gonna change the color for this and add another waterfall here, change the background, and maybe add some smoke elements. I'm gonna do it pretty much the same way as I did this. So I'm not gonna waste your guys' time doing the same thing over and over again. So once you're happy with it, again, I will add some more elements, but I'll come back and do that later on. So let's go ahead and join this window. Let's change this to the node editor. And let's go down to the scene tab. So now we can go ahead and set things up. This is always the fun part for me, is composing the image and making it look better. Go ahead and click use nodes. Go ahead and check backdrop. Zoom out so we can find these nodes. There they are. And then if we press N, bring up this sidebar here. Let's go ahead and add a viewer node. So we can either Shift A, go to output, add a viewer node and then connect it up. Or you can do it the lazy connect way. So if you've got the node wrangler add-on enabled, if you hold Control Shift and left click on any node, it'll preview that node. So it's a very quick and handy tool to have. Definitely go and check it out. I did a quick tutorial on it. If you want to go and check it out, go and click up here. So it definitely does save you some time with your workflow. Helps optimize things and gets things moved quicker. Again, most things are done in the 3D view. Now we can just color grade it and maybe add some extra elements to it. So if you want, you can always go color balance. So color grading is subjective, and what looks good to one person might not look good to another. So it's entirely up to you how you grade your final image or your final shot. And for the most part, you're trying to fit a theme or a style that you like. My style is very faded and powdered and fantasy kind of look, if that's a thing. So this one here, this lift, gamma, and gain is a fancy way of saying shadows, midtones, and highlights. So for the shadows, let's go ahead and try a blue color. It looks okay. Let's try a green. And when you're moving these values, you don't want to go too crazy because, you know, this happens. Kind of, it's gone Hulk. So let's bring this back. And then on this one, we want to complement this color. So over here, maybe. It's not too bad. So I kind of like that faded look. Let's go and... I'm not liking the green too much, so let's change this to blue and change this to green. We can also try yellows. I think the yellows brings it out quite well. Maybe orange. Now for the highlights, I don't generally play with the highlights. If you want, you can always brighten up the whites. So again, I take as much time with this as I do with pretty much everything. You want to spend as much time as you can with it. The next thing we can do is maybe a sunbeams. Let's go to filter, sunbeams. Just drop this in here. Again, I drop this into the bottom string and then Control Shift left click on this node, just so I don't have to plug it into the viewer node. It saves me a bit of time. So now for this, before we see anything, we need to increase this ray length. So I'm just going to increase this a bit, see how it looks. So now we want to decide where the majority of light's coming from and which direction the rays are going to go. So let's make it something like this. Then what I need to do is Shift A, go to color, add in a mix. I'm going to drop this here, plug this into the viewer node. Then I want to take this feed here from the color balance. Just plug this in. Now that's the wrong way around, so let's do this. Now we change this from mix to screen. These nice sunbeams. Another thing you can do is reduce the factor here. So if you want less, it's entirely up to you, so it's not as bright. Another thing you can do, if you Shift A, go to color, RGB curves. You drop this on between the sunbeams and the mix node here. Again, play around with it and get something that works for you. Once you're happy with it and you want to render this out, I'm going to go to the render panel. Go to where it says output and make sure you save where your output is. Then you want to make sure you set the file type. So I'm going to change this from PNG to FFmpeg video. Then under the encoding, you want to choose the presets and choose H.264 in MP4 format. And then you can go ahead and hit animation. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, most of this work, or the movement of the camera, could be done in this node editor. You can do it in this way, and I think it's a little bit quicker to render as well. If we render this now, we'd see how long it takes. I mean, maybe I should do a test and set this up in the node editor only, and then render it out and see how long it takes. But I just wanted to do it in the 3D view for a couple of reasons. One, to show you that you could deform the mesh of this waterfall, this video. And two, because I've not done it in the 3D view before. So it was interesting. But as I say, hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, be sure to give it a like. If you create your own digital painting and you want to share it with us, be sure to go over to our Facebook group. There'll be links in the description. Also, there's links in the description for all the assets that I used. As always, thank you for watching, and see you next time.